What's your worst story from the throw him in the pool, he'll learn how to swim parenting style? I had never gone camping before I was 11. I really wanted to go with my 10-year-old cousin. My parents took me to the woods and handed us the tent and a half-full bag of Ranch Delicious and like a pack of bratwursts and my 7-year-old sister. Then they pulled off, leaving us to camp for the first time alone in the woods with a 7-year-old. Not a fun weekend. I never went camping again. But it was apparently fine because that's how my dad and uncle learned. I'm just grateful for the lack of serial killers and black bears. My dad was notorious for the rub dirt on it method when I got hurt as a kid. When I was 9, I was in a nasty motorcycle accident out in the desert. I broke and misplaced my fibula. The bone was protruding from my leg. My dad didn't want to end his desert trip early, so he told me not to look at it and to keep trying to walk. I was in so much pain, anytime I would move I would black out. My brother was so concerned he urged my dad that we should go home. My dad finally gave in but was so drunk he let my 11-year-old brother at the time drive us out of the desert. He was so nervous he hit so many bumps and each bump I would black out then come to. Once we got home he thought it would be best to sleep it off before going to the hospital. The next day I was admitted to the hospital and my dad was taken into custody by CPS. Not my story, but my mom's. She developed a phobia after she was thrown into a pool to learn how to swim. At the age of 70, she still doesn't know how to. She's terrified of being on the water, even in a safety vest. And then, some fake clairvoyant told her she would die by drowning. So we spent our summers in the mountains as far away from being on water. Edit. She was thrown in the water as a child, not as a 70-year-old. Edit 2. Fake clairvoyant. Wheel 1. I was scared of the deep end, so my dad threw me in. My cousin parked the inflatable mattress in the corner I was in immediately. My parents supposedly yelled at him to move. He didn't. I don't know how long I was under the mattress for, but I was spitting up water, choking when I came back up. I was maybe 6 at the time. Doing trauma surgery. A mom decided she needed a nap and told her 15-year-old daughter to drive. Mom survived. Daughter didn't. My younger cousin, 4 at the time, was a climber and always needed help getting down. His dad told his mom to leave him. He'll either learn how to get down himself or stop climbing. Cousin ended up climbing onto the roof, fell off and got impaled on a fence pole. One very expensive trip to the ER and he now has a cool scar on his thigh. Edit. He did not stop climbing. He just got better ways to get off the roof. Hurt my arm playing football during morning break at school. Was sent home by the school nurse. My dad said it was fine. Bandaged it and sent me to school the next day, only for them to send me home again within an hour. My mum made my dad take me to hospital and my arm was broken. My wrist had spilt lengthways. It was in casts for 9 months. I was secretly buzzing, to be honest, because, well, that showed him the knob. Edit. Whoa. Appreciate the upvotes and awards, guys and gals. Ignore them, bullies, and don't show a reaction. When they are bored they'll stop. Completely false. And you wonder why I hate going to school so much. Mother. It's not a wonder that when I went to secondary school, I made a motto of don't stand for anyone's bullshit. I went through too much of this shit for anyone else to do the same. Ironically enough, there are studies that state that the trauma childhood bullying goes for the rest of one's life. So I'm pretty much set. My father-in-law decided when his first child was born that he and his wife, would not go to the baby when he started crying in the middle of the night, in order to teach him that crying doesn't get you anything in this world. Turns out, newborns need to be fed every 2 hours. So it's a good thing my mother-in-law ignored him and went to their newborn son. Otherwise he might have died. I was volunteering at a parent-child zoo day and saw a few parents like this. The zoo had some free roaming peacocks. And it was awful how many parents just didn't tell their too young to know kids that they can be mean. So the little toddler goes, "Oh, pretty bird," and tries to get a closer look. Only to get chased and attacked by this thing while the parents watch. Most of them said something like, "You should have known better." Like, how if you never teach them? The child can barely walk. You expect them to remember that some animals have a strong territorial sense? And then your baby gets terrorized by this thing that's bigger than them and looks like an alien for all they know. And you don't even give them a hug? See also, that one mom we had to kick out of the zoo because she was encouraging her kids to antagonize the llama in the hopes it would spit on them. Yikes. People, have some empathy for tiny humans who trust you implicitly with their well-being. I got stung by a bee and my mother was convinced I was faking. At the point I started to struggle to breathe. She finally irritatingly relented and made me walk to the hospital pushing my baby brother's stroller the entire way. When I got there, the staff were mortified, horrified, sometimes mortified. Apparently, rushed me in to give me an epinephrine shot. And luckily that did the trick. Many months later, B got into my bedroom. And my father called me a PSSY for coming and getting him to deal with it. Instead of dealing with it myself. You have to learn how to deal with these things sometime. Or, like, I could just ask someone not allergic to bees to come and safely deal with the bee instead of risking hospitalization. Edit. Just to address some stuff I'm getting comments. I agree my parents were terrible. And abusive for more than just this one single incident. I have been NC for about 20 years because of the way they treated me as a child. I have countless incidents like this from both of them. This one just stood out at the time I was replying to this. My stepmom walked us, me, sister, brother 10-12, deep into the woods and left us there to learn survival skills. We thought we were all out on a hike, then she distracted us. Ran away. We wandered into camp hours later. We knew how to get back but searched for hours worried that something had happened to her. She was drinking margaritas and smirking. Edit. Thank you all for the smiles and awards. When I was about 5 or 6, I was very sick with the flu. Fever. Vomiting. Sweating. Congestion. It was awful. There was some mix-up at the pharmacy. And they thought I was my father and gave him adult medication, basically these giant horse pills. Now, normal child medication for things like this are syrups and chewable tea for obvious reasons. My dad comes home and tells me I have to take these meds. I have a hard time getting them down. Almost choking a few times. My dad got frustrated and literally started shoving these huge pills down my sore throat with his angrily shaking fingers. I started crying. My nose was stuffed so I could only breathe through my mouth. I remember my dad's wedding ring banging against my teeth. Eyes watering. Gasping for air while looking at my mom for help. Eventually I coughed it back up. Crying and throat on fire. I remember my mom demanding an apology from my dad. Who just said, well, he's going to have to learn to take pills like that sometime anyway, and stormed off. Damn. I haven't thought about that story in 20+ years. When I got my very first period. Then my family made a trip to the pool the next day. My mom shrugged it off and told me you don't bleed when you're swimming and never said another word about it. Spent the entire time taking trips to the bathroom. My brother and I are 7 years apart. When he was 16 and I was 9, he taught me how to box by putting a hockey helmet on me and beating the ever-loving shit out of me. I'm reasonably certain I was concussed. And I suffered horrible migraines from that day well into my 20s. I learned from these stories that some parents would rather have a dead kid than a kid who has to learn things. I was always a picky eater growing up. One time my mom sat me down with a small bowl of almonds and told me I couldn't get up out of my seat until I finished it. I insisted that I hated them and they were making my mouth itch. She thought I was just being difficult. I just started to swallow the almonds like pills because my mouth was so itchy from chewing on them. A couple years later I saw an allergist and discovered I was allergic to tree nuts. 2 days after I graduated high school I came home to an empty house. All my stuff in a U-Haul because my mom and stepdad moved without me. I have been financially independent ever since. But a heads up would have been nice. Edit. I woke up so grateful for all the love this post is getting. To make some clarifications. My real dad was not involved in this situation, he was on the other side of the country. I'm still close with him but he is very low income so he could not help me in this. I went no contact with my mom for about a year but she weaseled her was back in. I think I see her in person once every 2 years and I do not acknowledge my stepfather exists. My parents told me they were kicking me out at 18 in a move to motivate me. I was in college, no job and virtually no money. My grandfather had left me about 10k as savings bonds that I asked for but they wouldn't give me. So I made a plan. I went around to 5 different targets and shoplifted about 4-5 video games that I took to GameStop to sell. Stupid and wrong I know, and at the end of the day I had about $600. I was planning on buying some weed to sell to get some income going till I got on my feet. But when I got back to my house a cop was waiting for me. Parents ended up cashing in my 10k to pay for the lawyer. They threw me in the pool. I drowned. I needed CPR. They let me use my floaties after that. Edit. Holy shit. All I did was go to work and I came back to WoW. Thanks for the awards and all the comments. When I was 10 my parents had my siblings. Twins baby girls. Within 2 weeks I was babysitting them 12 plus hours a day. At least 5 days a week. Not only that. Since I was already babysitting my aunt dropped of her 1 and 2 year old too. So I, who had no prior experience babysitting or caring for kids, was now babysitting 4 kids under 3. What a little shitty show that was. I don't know if this counts but stop crying or I'll give you a reason to cry, something my dad used to say to me. It would send me into a panic. I was upset and didn't know how to stop crying and then hearing that would make it worse because now I'm crying cause my dad was mad at me and if I didn't stop crying he was gonna make me cry even more. My dad actually did throw me in a pool to see if I could swim. They didn't want to teach me to tie my shoes. Because my mum said I had to learn that myself. So should you. Similar thing happened to me. Parents always got me shoes without laces so I never got a chance to learn. One day I get shoes with laces and I go to school and they get undone. I ask a teacher for help and she says you're in 1st grade so you should know how to tie your shoes and refuses to help. Question mark? At age 4 my father decided that my sister and I should learn to tie our shoes. He made us stand there for hours trying to do it. Crying. We just weren't quite old enough. Edited for unfortunate autocorrect. Every time I asked my parents to explain something as a kid I was told either you're smart, you'll figure it out, or you just don't want to do it. Any attempt at maturity was met with either flat out laughter or being told that I was too young to worry about that. Cue me turning 18. And suddenly I'm expected to be an adult. Get a job. Pay taxes. And all that jazz. I asked where in the hell do I start? And they got pissy because I apparently hadn't figured anything out. Huh. Wonder why? Cliff jumping. 20 feet up a girl's dad pushed her but she hesitated and tried to stay up there but slipped. Landed on her back in a boulder from 15 feet than the water. You probably just killed her. Then I jumped in to do a rescue. Luckily our lifeguard group was there doing practice rescues and even had a board. How she only survived with just bruises is a miracle. Search and rescue pulled her out the rest of the way. I was at the beach one time and it was hot out. I could not walk on the sand without sandals on. I heard a cry and looked up to see a little girl standing barefoot on the sand. Not more than 2. Screaming for her dad. 5 feet away. Who just told her to stop being such a little PSSY. Just about had a rage stroke and ran over to pick her up myself. But he eventually did. Let your kid touch the fire. He won't do that again. My mom forced me to drink milk and she thought I just hate healthy stuff and only prefer junk food. The thing is, I always loved veggies, but I also like junk food. Basically I love food except for milk. I just couldn't consume milk. It'd make me vomit and in the end I'd have sudden acid reflux not being able to handle it. She thought I was acting to escape, but I just hated it. Turns out I'm lactose intolerant and my mom still thinks I'm making that up just because she can't let go of her ego. When I was around 11 or 12, two kids from the neighborhood got into a street fight. Kid number 1 clearly got the best of kid number 2. And kid number 2 was crying and went home. Should have been end of story. Kid number 2's parents met him at his front door and sent him back out there to continue to fight. I'm not sure if it was about honor or what, but it was painful to watch. My mom told me and my sister, 8 and 6 at the time, to run away if we wanted to leave so badly. We were told to do laundry but didn't exactly know how. Commissars, being young, took that opportunity and packed up to leave. 10 minutes later my sister was hit by a drunk driver. I still perfectly remember her Crayon suitcase FK'd up in the middle of the road. She was mostly fine from the crash. Just scrapes and bruises. The real pain came from realizing our mother would prefer to challenge us to run away rather than teach us how to do laundry. She's currently NC and I moved across the ocean. It's better now. I mean, my parents mostly did the minimum as they were too busy getting drunk and going to court with my siblings. Pretty much just thrown into life. Though my mom did sell me weed and the occasional Valium when I'd panic from it all. My older sister taught me how to ride a bicycle by putting me on the seat of a full-size bike at the top of our downward sloping driveway and giving me a good push. Sending me flying down the driveway and jettisoning me into the street. I got the hang of it pretty quickly. This actual thing. I was a lifeguard as high schooler. Some parent did this to their 5-year-old. Parent thought the kid was fine. Because he wasn't splashing around. He was bobbing up and down with his arms going straight up. And straight out. That actually means they're drowning. Had to jump in and grab the kid. Who had swallowed significant amounts of water. And call an ambulance to check the kid out. Parent didn't want us to call the ambulance. But we told him it was the ambulance. Or the police. Because what he did could be considered child endangerment. Dad was losing his shit. Screaming at me. A 17-year-old girl. Owner of the pool saw this. And he, former Navy dude, got up in the guy's face. Parent was banned from the pool for life. To this day. I'm convinced the guy was completely hammered. Just want to say I hate a lot of your parents and you all deserve better. Just walk it off. Apostrophe. My dad. When I developed a big nasty cyst on my toe when my mom was away on a stressful trip. She was not pleased to come back and have to immediately drive me to the hospital. It got to the point where I took one step on it and almost passed out. He apologized afterward. Got a sandwich from a really good sandwich place and I forgave him. Now I laugh about it. Edit. It was Maria Sub Shop in Scituate, MA. USA. It's really good. Also, I guess this is worth bringing up. My dad is the son of a man who attempted to walk off a gangrenous leg infection that very same year. RIP Grandpa. Oh, I'll laugh about that too. Well. This is the opposite. Back in the 70s I got to interview Jean-Michel Cousteau. Son of undersea explorer Jacques Cousteau. Who invented scuba gear. When Jean-Michel and his brother Philip were little. Their dad took them out into the ocean. Strapped on their scuba gear. And threw them in. My cousin literally tried to do this with his daughter. They had an above ground pool and he picked her up and went to throw her in. He ended up throwing too hard. She landed on the edge of the pool and fell out. Undiagnosed osteomyelitis in my knee. Crap, doctor told us it was growing pains. So was told to just keep exercising it and walking. The abscess burst out of my left shin bone and caused blood poisoning and basically crippled me. but we'd booked a vacation in Paris. So I had to walk the whole city on various tours and my mum insisted I was being lazy by losing consciousness every time I sat down. She finally consulted a specialist when I started to sleep for 3 days straight on the couch.